I think we can begin. This feels so far away from me. Okay, welcome everybody. Buenas tardes. Shalom. Thank you very, very much for joining us today. My name is Barbara Rapkin. 7.5 years ago, my husband Mort, you know him as the Rye Guy, our sweet doggie Maggie, and I moved from Cincinnati, Ohio to Panama to begin a retirement adventure. Please come. We never dreamed how adventurous it would be. For us, as well as for many newcomers here today, I can say it has been a wonderful, rejuvenating, inspiring, challenging adventure and just plain fun. We have met the kindest, most helpful, interesting, and colorful people, both expats and Panamanians, many of whom have become really good friends. And so, I am very proud to say that I am a Boqueteña. I am very proud also to say that I am a Jew, a Jewish Boqueteña. Being a Jew in Boquete is not like being a Jew in Cincinnati, mainly because there are not that many Jews to be Jewish with. What does that mean exactly? Well, for starters, since my family is not here, with whom do I celebrate the Jewish holidays? Being Jewish is really a very communal experience. Even if one does not practice or observe the laws or the Jewish rituals, we do have a common history, a common language, shared memories, some good, some bad. A Jew likes to eat Jewish, laugh at Jewish jokes, and usually, when all is said and done, get buried Jewishly. A Jewish community, how's that going to manifest in Boquete, the wonderful place we chose to spend our retirement years, if we are the only Jews in town? Well, we are finding that we are not alone, that there is a very loosely knit community of Jews, from secular to observant, and that some of us are seeking or at least receptive to Jewish activity, however that may be defined. Some of you have been to our Passover Seders, or Rosh Hashanah Jewish New Year lunches, or Shabbat dinners. Some of you may remember the wonderful communal Seders at Tanny's or Bistro Boquete. Anybody go to that? It was fun. Many of you have enjoyed Mort's bagels and lox, rye bread, rugelach, and knishes, and you don't have to be Jewish to love them. It occurred to me that there is a Panamanian Jewish story to tell, that I am now part of it, and it's a story worth sharing. So this gathering today is an opportunity to explore what it means to be a Jew in Panama, to learn where we came from and what the future might hold for us. Before I introduce today's speakers, I'd like to take a moment to thank the staff and board of this beautiful Biblioteca de Boquete for hosting this gathering. For some of you, it might be your first visit here. I hope you'll be frequent visitors. We're so very proud of this wonderful facility. It's a library. In fact, Price, I think it's the only lending library in Panama. People can actually take out books, take them home, read them, and bring them back. How novel is that? It's a cultural center, a learning center. Artists and photographers can display their work, as you see here. And this community art show, the work that is in this show is for sale, and the sale benefits the library. Price Peterson, Price, please stand up, is a founding board member. He's with us representing the Library Foundation, and the community owes you and the Peterson family and the board of this foundation, of this library, a debt of gratitude for what you've done for this community. My sincere thanks to the underwriters and organizers of this event. And I'll ask you to stand up as I call your names if you're not too shy. Richard and Ingrid Sharbit, Joel Dinerman, Sid and Sharon Estrin, who came up from La Arqueta, Bernie Moskovitz. Where's Bernie? No. Tell him it's time to come up. Seriously, Ernesto. Yeah. Peter Sterling, and my husband, Morton Ratkin. I want to thank Karen Dubitsky, Karen, stand up, for her help in organizing today's event. And many, many thanks to our photographer, volunteer, Beth Abrahams, who's quite an excellent photographer and kindly agreed to help us today to get the photos for history. Ralph DeSalle, who's sitting in the front, volunteered to video this event, and we're very grateful to Ralph. Following the presentation, we will enjoy a lovely l'chaim. L'chaim is Hebrew, means to life. A lovely l'chaim kosher reception. When's the last time you had a kosher reception in Boquete, I want to know? And that is sponsored by Robert Price, who is the CEO of Price Smart, who lives in San Diego, and his wife, Allison. I'm very grateful to Rebecca Perelis of Cerro Punta for the donation of the beautiful fresh fruits which adorn the table, to Jacobo Coriat of Todo $1, who provided a number of plastic things for us to serve the goodies in, and Jeffrey's Kosher Bakery in Panama City. And now, today, for our presentation, we're going to introduce speakers Robert Jakobowitz and then Yakov Polowoda. First, I will introduce Robert, and he will address the audience, and then Yakov will come forward. Yakov, I want to add, is with his wife, Hannah. We're very happy that you're here. Robert Jakobowitz, and by the way, on your programs, which I hope you picked up in Spanish and in English, the full biography, so I'm going to keep this a little short. Robert received his MSW from Yeshiva University. He's been a professional and lay leader in Jewish communities throughout the U.S. As a retiree in Panama, Robert created and facilitates a book and film club for English-speaking residents of Panama City, called Living as a Jew in the Caribbean and Latin America. He's also created the Panama Jewish Oral History Project, and he will also tell you about an exciting project he's been involved in for 30 years, resurrecting the memory of a very brave man who saved many, many Jews during the war. So without further ado, Robert.
Thank you, Barbara. And I just really want to thank you for your vision and doing this, and Mort being the man behind the woman leader who did it. And again, thank you. This is a marvelous opportunity for me to be here in Boquete, and obviously for all of us to come together and hopefully work for an organized future of the Jewish community in Cherokee. So let's hopefully be able to do that. Before I begin my formal presentations, I just want to let you know that there are some handouts on the table, so you'll just know as I refer to them over the course of the talk what we've got. One of the things that you'll know is that I have organized what is called Being a Jew, Living as a Jew in the Caribbean and Latin America. The introduction to it, as well as the bibliography, is there on the table for taking. If you do not, again, I've only was able to bring 25. So as a couple, take one, and hopefully others will have it. If not, let Barbara know, and or you'll have my email address, and I can always send you a copy of the bibliography. And I'll tell you more about that in a little while. The other part of it is that along with, I belong to Kol Sharit Israel, which is the oldest synagogue in Panama, and it was founded by the descendants of those who escaped the Inquisition. And I know there's at least a couple of members of those families here in the audience, and we'll talk more to that as well. But it was started as a vision by Leanne Lindo, and she has been one of the visionaries in the community in her wanting to do something to digitalize the history of the Sephardic, Western Sephardic Jewish community. And it's, again, Leanne Lindo Wasserman, and she has really been the one of the community. I came in late, but I was there more regularly and was able to pull together, again, the process by which we are interviewing the elders of the community. We are scanning family documents, and we have a website in creation, and it's all a volunteer activity that we do through the congregation as well as members of the congregation. There are 2 reprints. We have a marvelous annual report to the congregation. It's called Bulletin KSI, and in 2014, the yellow copy one has a report to the congregation relative to the beginning of the book club and some of the seminal parts of the oral history project. So that's just the beginning of it. This last year in 2015, we just celebrated, as of this past December, the 2nd year of the book club, and we have some of the documentation that we put together in the oral history project here, as well as, again, so you get those copies, and those are important. The other one is that it'll be 30 years, as Barbara said, I have championed the cause of a Portuguese diplomat who rescued Jews during the Holocaust when he was the consul general in Bordeaux, France. His name was Aristides de Sousa Mendes. And when he was there during the war, even though Portugal and its dictator, President Salazar, feigned to be in being neutral, was sympathetic to the Axis, and he sent out what was called Circular 14, which essentially forbade his consular corps from issuing transit visas to stateless individuals, as well as others who were in transit who were escaping the Nazis. He disobeyed those orders. Along with his senior staff and his children, he issued upwards to 30,000 visas, of which 10,000 were to Jews, and the majority were to non-Jews. As a consequence of that, he was removed from his consular post, taken back to Lisbon, where he was stripped of his diplomatic credentials. He died in poverty and anonymity in 1954. I, as a person who worked for the Jewish community in the greater East Bay, which is Oakland, California, was responsible for the Shoah Memorial, read a newspaper article, did not know anything about him. And for 30 years, we started an international organization, which has its own history of interest. And not too long ago, he was recognized in Portugal and installed as a hero of the Portuguese people. And it's been a really rewarding experience, and I continue to work on his behalf because we have a docudrama that tells about his life, and I'll tell more about that. So those are the handouts, as well as, again, it is the rationale for the film for the oral history project. So what I want to do now is give you some information about the Jewish history in Panama, and get this up and running, and we'll be able to talk. So hopefully you can see this. This is the map that I was able to put together of Jewish communities in the Caribbean and in Latin America. Maybe if we turn on the lights in the back, you'll be able to see a little better. Right by the wall there's the lights. And so what I'm going to do is quickly, because I know there's some time constraints, I'll try to give you a fast overview of 400 to 500 years of Jewish history in the Caribbean, and then talk about some of the activities. And we'll have more time to maybe discuss later on some things, right, Yaakov? We'll figure it out, right? And so, so essentially, The Inquisition, I don't know how many of you really know about the Inquisition or some of the finer points of it, but let me just quickly give you an overview, because that's what precipitated Jews going to the Caribbean, then to Central and South America. So the Inquisition began in Spain in 1481, even though there were other issues prior to that of popes essentially being the enemy of the Jews. But in any case, officially it was in 1481, and the Jews were formally expelled from that country in 1492. Those that could moved to Portugal, but in 1497, the Inquisition went over to the Pyrenees, and they were then expelled as well. And as you know, the Jews were subject to three actions. They could either convert to Catholicism, they could leave, or being burnt at the stake. So Jews migrated, for the most part, to Holland, which was a liberal Protestant country in a greater extent, and to Hamburg, where numbers, and also others went to the east, the Levant, North America, Ottoman Empire, South Central Europe, Balkans in North America, and those are the Eastern Sephardi. So the Sephardic community is broken out into two different groups relative to where they went. One would be the Western Sephardi, and again the Eastern Sephardi. And consequent to where they migrated, they've essentially developed different strains of Judaism and different ways to practice their Judaism. And here again in Panama, the original group, they founded the synagogue here, which is called Sharit Israel, which is going to be celebrating its 130th anniversary this year, being founded in 1876. So historic accounts of the numbers of Jews who left Spain, they vary enormously. Historians of the period gave extremely high figures. Juan de Mariana speaks of 800 people, and Don Isaac Abravanel of 300. Modern estimates are between 100 to 200,000 individuals, and other accounts place those to be who became conversos, which are those who converted to Catholicism, at about 250,000. In any case, those who did convert to Catholicism, known as conversos, or anusim. And anusim is a newer word that really means those who converted against their will. So that's what more academic and others call the conversos as anusim. And they were not trusted as new Christians by their neighbors, and in many instances were never accepted, were viewed upon with suspicion, and the neighbors, while some individuals were accused of Judaizing, with the liability of being placed before a church trial known as the auto de fe, to either then be burned at the stake or imprisoned or paraded in the streets, being covered with ashes with signs attesting to their guilt, or even further tortured to betray their family members to be spared future torture and death. So it was clear that Jews were not in a very good place. And one of the things I wanted to note is that in previous generations, conversos were known as, and maybe you're more familiar with it, Marranos. Right? But Marranos is a derisive term in Spanish that meant pig. So no longer do we use that in reference to people, because clearly, even when they became new Christians, the conversos were still regarded as less than equal as new Christians. And so just remember that as part of sort of what you know. I also want to recognize two members of the congregation, three members. Leslie, you remember the congregation?
I am.
All right, Leslie Milson, who's a member of the congregation, Ernesto Mota, and Patricia Maduro. Patricia, you're here. I see you come in. Do we have any other members of the congregation? And Roberto, right? Whom I've never met. But I was warned you were going to be here. So
I am not a member, but my father was.
Okay, anyway, so who else do we have here?
I'm not a member, but I'm from Panama.
Okay, good. And anyone else? But in two instances, Patricia is one of the volunteers with me with the Oral History Project, and she's our coordinator of public outreach, which means that she's able, we've interviewed about 8 or 9 of the elders of the community, and she arranges for the film crew to go in and to interview them. And Ernesto, one of the books he's been a supporter right from the very beginning. When I first approached the board to do this, Ernesto was on the board, on the committee, and helped guide the organizing the book club. And he was one of our stars. We meet on a monthly basis, sometimes twice a month. One of the books is called The Jewish Pirates of the Caribbean. Right? Yeah, don't laugh. I have the book here. And even further interesting is Ernesto and Roberto's family are descendants of some of those Jewish pirates, even though they call them privateers. Ernesto was really very specific about, we were not pirates. We were privateers along with the Cohen and Enriquez families, all right? They were descendants as well from Jamaica and some of the, so you'll see, these are all the islands that the Jews went to once they got out of Holland and they joined the East or the West Indies Trading Company. They became investors and wayfarers, and as they went through these different islands, they left mishpacha, they left family there, and then moved to other islands. So they really are international merchant families in the best sense of Jewish history. Ironically, Aruba, which is an important island for the Maduro family, is not listed on the map, so I don't know, okay? But you'll see, everywhere here, there were Jewish families, either as merchants or as plantation owners, or they were ship outfitters, because these were all part of the areas where, again, the ships would ply the oceans, and they had to be refurbished, they had to be supplied, especially in St. Thomas and Jamaica, and that's where numbers of the families were. So this is what it was and what it looked like. Okay? So as I said, and they even made it to what was then called New Amsterdam, which eventually is the island, which is the island of, Manhattan and New York. And then, even though the Dutch were friendly to the Jews, Peter Stuyvesant was not. And there was a point where he wouldn't allow Jews in New Amsterdam and refused even to have Jews buried there until he got word from the West Indies Trading Company to shape up, because Jews were part of the corporate organization, and he better essentially pay attention to them, and therefore then a Jewish cemetery was established in then was called New Amsterdam. So again, we're talking about the Western Sephardi. And my area of concentration right now, even though this is, I'm a lay person in it, is that I've been working with the families. I have no relationship other than being Jewish. And one of the book club meetings was so gratifying. One of our members named Graziella Cardoze said at the meeting, thank you for, those of us who were expats living in Panama wanted to meet more people from the community because we weren't getting integrated. So therefore, the Jewish Book Club. Okay? I'm shorthanding this because I'm running out of time. But in any case, and I said to Graziella, you have to understand, your history is our history. And yet, it was as if she was living in a bubble because others had not really engaged the families. And what I found is, one of the book clubs we always deal with people's histories. And one of the book clubs, we met at the home of Rita Sasso, which is one of the names of the families of the original, along with Anita Enriquez. Anita Leonard Enriquez, and between the two of them, they're the historians, they're the keeper of the family trees. All right? And just about every family has a family tree, right? And they're all descended from Joshua Piza, P-I-Z-A, who was a chacham, who was a lay rabbi, who traveled again he was in St. Thomas, he was in Curacao, was it Curacao? Patricia?
Curacao first.
Where was it?
He came from Amsterdam to Curacao and then to...
There we go. That's why I got my mavens in here, okay? So in any case, and then he came to Panama, and from there we had about 25 of the original families. I can give you the names, but again, there's Mata, Maduro, Sasso, Enriquez, Cohen Enriquez, there's again, Lindo, De Castro, and there's others as well. But in any case, that started my interest in wanting to find out, because everything people were doing in their homes, but it wasn't going anywhere that I knew of. And so I looked for books that would then be about the Jewish experience, and I found hundreds of books on the internet, and that's what we started to do as a club, to essentially read about the books that were that are of interest. So the first book we read is Through the Sands of Time, which is the history of the Jewish community of St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands. And really that's where the history again of the Jews in the Caribbean along with in Curacao and Jamaica began. And this book was the doctoral thesis for somebody at Brandeis University, and it really was a wonderful beginning. So part of what I'm telling you is that this is possible for this community. We have sustained a Jewish book club now for 2 years, where we order the books, we read them, we also describe who we are as members of the Panamanian community, as well as our history and links, and that was able to bring us closer together. One of the other books that we read is An Island Called Home by a very famous Cuban Sephardic, sociologist Ruth Behar, who's a professor at the University of Michigan. And she was from the Sephardic community in Cuba. And again, there's a very large Sephardic and large Ashkenazi community that essentially went away with the advent of the revolution and the installment of Castro. And she's written a number of books. And this is, again,